Hey everybody, I'm Fab, got Dan on the line,
Hello.
and we are about to record Hollywood Outlaws. So if you haven't watched episode 9 of season 1 of Bosch,
Gonna be a lot of spoilers.
yes, if you don't want any spoilers, turn it off now.
It's basically one big spoiler, so turn that off.
Yeah, that should be the subtitle of the show.
Yeah, it could be.
One big spoiler.
Yeah, could be.
Okay, I got my notes right here.
Yeah, I've got some here as well.
I got my LAPD badge clipped to my waistcoat.
I'm not watching your video, so
That's okay.
I'll take your word for it.
Shall we? Are you all right? Shall we start the show immediately? Do you want to do something beforehand?
No, I'm ready. I've been to the toilet, if that's what you're asking. I've just been.
That's always.
Do you have any business to take care of?
Yes, exactly. Any last?
You know, any pressing matters that need to be taken care of?
Actually,
I think I'm okay for now.
I have one pressing matter. I just need to get up for a second and close the window.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Otherwise,
In case any noisy bastards go past.
We'll have people shouting outside or something. It's Friday. People might start partying at any minute.
What about all those umpire bands that you have over there? What they walk past practicing or something?
I've never had one.
Never said that happened. Okay.
Never had an umpire band here so
what a
far.
shame.
But you know, it's the first for everything.
There is a first for everything. Yeah.
Got to be prepared. You never know.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Okay, let's start this show, shall we?
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
Why don't you do the intro? I have a feeling I did the last one, and if I didn't, then I did.
Okay.
It's okay.
Yeah. So, episode 9. What are we? Okay, ready?
I am ready.
Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Hollywood Outlaws. My name is Dan.
And I'm Fab. Hello.
Yeah, and we're back, and it's been a while. It's been since we recorded. It's because we letting people behind the scenes. We recorded a couple in a row last time. It's been like almost 2 months since we last recorded, which is it's been a while. So when I started watching Bosch again today, I thought I'm gonna have to try and like watch back a bit so I know what's going on. Luckily, I picked it up pretty quickly, but I was starting to think, am I going to remember where this is up to? But very quickly, I picked it up.
This episode's actually quite it's an easy, nice in, right? I thought it was quite easy. I had the same thing, and I was like, oh, will I remember everything? But it turns out it was kind of easy to do, I think. So I want to, before we get into it, so today's topic will be Bosch Season 1, Episode 9, The Magic Castle.
The Magic Castle.
Before we get into that, I just want to mention a quick thing. We have a Patreon now, Dan. I saw. Created a Patreon. So if you like this show and if you want to support it, you can go to patreon.com/fabsh, FIBSH. I put my name on there because currently the money goes to me.
Yeah, I know. I'll be round for my 10%.
Yeah, so it's currently it's not really enough to pay any other people, but I'm going to
send Paulie walnuts around.
Oh God! Oh God! So I have plans to first, like the first thing, we're gonna upgrade the network a little bit. I mean you're last on that list because you have a good recording setup.
I do. Yeah,
I have plans to send Dave and Mike some equipment because they need it.
Good idea.
They need it a bit more than you actually.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But we'll see. Yeah, so you can support us now. That's appreciated. And also, I just wanted to say, so you can send us feedback at sixgun.org. And if you get any bounce, like not bounce emails, but emails from like a ticketing system that tells you that something's wrong, just ignore that. Your feedback is reaching us. I have some issues there that I'm currently in the process of fixing. It's not as easy as it sounds. So your feedback will get to us, and we would appreciate your feedback because this is the penultimate episode of season 1.
It is,
and then we have one more episode, and after that we're gonna do like a wrap up thing. And if you have any questions or any just observations on Bosch in general, just send them to us, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, and if you don't send us any feedback, we'll have to do a wrap instead of a wrap up, which will be really bad. We'll be like, we like watching Bosch and whatever. Anyway, let's not get into that. But
well, if they don't send us anything, I'll just waffle. We'll just fill an hour with waffling.
We have had one thing I should mention is, although we haven't recorded in a while, we have actually seen each other in person since we last recorded the show.
Yes, you're right. Fosdem was in between that.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
And we had some feedback from, which we'll mention when we get to that feedback show, from Bradley, who's been listening, which is great. So he'll hear this in about 6 months probably. So hello to Bradley.
I thought that was great. Yeah. We'll get to that. I'll cue that in for the feedback. So we we have some feedback. You're right.
We do have some feedback,
but send us more. Like general observations on Bosch or something would be great. Like what you're thinking about Irv.
Yeah. Not much Irv in this episode. I mean, I'm spoiling it a bit now, but not a lot of Irv in this. I felt it was Irv light this episode.
So let's get to this episode. So this episode is really weird because I mean we'll talk about this in detail, but it feels to me like it's the last episode of the season.
It does very much. Yeah.
It comes to a head, and then there's like a shot at the end where they zoom out, and you're like, this looks like it's the last episode. But it isn't. There's still one episode more coming. I found out, so looking into this, I was doing like a timeline, because they keep talking when Waits actually started his like murdering spree. And so I looked this up. So I didn't know this, but we kind of talked about this. The pilot episode they filmed earlier, and the pilot episode's actually from 2014. And the rest of season 1 is from 2015. So they filmed that a year earlier. Which I guess explains why Veliver doesn't have as many tattoos. He got some tattoos in that year.
Yeah, the continuity people missed that one, didn't they?
Yeah.
I suppose the only other option would have been to try and CGI the tattoos back onto him. Well, no, 2 options, isn't there? You either try and CGI the extra tattoos onto the pilot, or you covered up the new ones.
Yeah, I think covering up is easier.
Yeah, that would be the easiest one. Yeah, you'd imagine. It is interesting that it feels like, well, we'll get to this, as you said, but it does very much feel like that this almost should be the last episode. And then there's like an extra bit after. There's another episode to kind of.
I can't remember what's in that episode. I think I've seen it twice, but I can't remember.
No, I can't remember either, so that'll be interesting when we get to that. So episode 9, The Magic Castle. Shall we dive into it?
Let's get into it. The last thing that happened was Waits murdered that prostitute and made it look like the murder of Harry's mother, right?
And also, I was going to say, and called him from somewhere nearby as well, because they worked out quickly that he must be somewhere nearby because he could see him. It was the ultimate kind of, creepy thing to do.
Yeah, now we have like, I don't know, this is like at the station, I guess the next morning, right? Mm-hmm. Bosch is getting there, and like the press is there. And he's kind of like pissed off. Yeah,
he just says, "Oh shit!" His car, as he pulls up, you see. Well, you can't actually see what he's looking at first, and he just goes, "Oh shit!" And then you see a lot of reporters hanging around the car, shoving the mics through the window as they do. And which he looks pissed off. And when they ask a question, he says, "Ask Dave Taylor. He knows the details." And then we see
Nate Taylor.
Is it Nate Taylor? So I put Dave Taylor. I don't know why I put. I'm going to change that in my notes.
Because everybody's called Dave.
Well, Dave's kind of generic. Yeah. So Nate Taylor, there you go. Yep. He says, "Ask him," and then you see him. He's the guy who kind of started a lot of this off.
The bald journalist guy from
the one I've put down as shitheel reporter, just because that's what I called him originally, so it's easier for me to remember. That's unfortunately for him. That's his code name now. So that's him, and then inside the station we see. In the task force, office, we see Kiz and she's talking Bosch through like what they've got on, on the whiteboard and some other things. And Barrel comes in too. But one thing I noticed, I just put down, random thought: police use a lot of whiteboards and pinboards. So
that's kind of like
they do.
Well, it's kind of like that's a staple of pretty much any cop show, right? They have like all the murder things in the background.
They do.
I do wonder if they do that in reality.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we need to, if we've got anyone listening who is in reality, a detective of some sort, that would be amazing. So please let us know.
Would be great. Yeah.
You'd imagine they'd have like touch screens by now because everyone else does. But I know this is actually a few years ago, isn't it? This was made, so maybe not.
I live right next to the Central Police Department here in Hamburg. I should just go over there. Do a press.
Show me your whiteboard.
Well, I wonder if you can get like a press tour. I'm gonna ask them.
Probably, yeah.
I want to see their whiteboards. You know, you have that thing in what's it, CSI or something, where they have like these very stylish glass whiteboards, so they can film through them, which are incredibly like they're not very.
Yeah, you can't write on them. You won't see it, will you?
Well, yeah, you can't see half of it. They're like really unrealistic, I feel. But in Bosch's case, they just have normal whiteboards.
Yeah. So they're looking through the evidence, and then everyone's favorite captain comes in, Captain Pounds. Basically, I've put just to wind Bosch up, it seems.
Yeah, just to shit in Bosch's coffee cup.
Basically, yeah. And he says it's a goddamn bromance.
Yes, like,
as he talks about Bosch and Waite's kind of relationship, if you like. And he seems to somehow want to blame Bosch for the serial killer, just like he does with everything else. And he jokes about how Bosch won't be there much longer.
I mean, his stupid attempts to wind Bosch up, he must know by this time that he can't. And Bosch just ignores him.
He gives a perfect response, which is like, he says you won't be here much longer, and then Bosch like sarcastically says, I'll miss your inspired leadership, Captain.
Yeah. So he's basically like Pounds is going or something.
Yeah. It's a good response.
And then we have another scene where J. Edgar is like in the squad room for the patrol guys, and he's like handing out pictures of Stokes. Oh, yeah. I guess that'll be the last episode because we don't know what happens to Stokes. They need to wind that up as well. That just occurred to me. So he hands that out, and they
seem pissed off, don't they? All the people are pissed off because Bosch let him go. They're like, well, because Stokes was in custody and they let him go. Well, I put down dissension in the ranks and a lot of like resentment towards Bosch from the
I find that weird. Like, so they're pissed off with Bosch because he let him go, to which Edgar points out, like, they wouldn't even know that it was Stokes if Bosch hadn't kept investigating. I don't understand why these guys aren't pissed off with J. Edgar, who kept declaring the case closed every 5 minutes. Every suspect they had is like, okay, case closed.
Yeah, let's go and buy shoes.
Yeah, I mean,
let's go shoe shopping, guys. Come on.
He's the really problem there, I feel. I don't know. One thing I wrote down is like, I don't know what this means. I wanted to ask you what that means. He's like, put the window, the picture behind your visor right in the car, and then he's like, ask in your local smoke houses.
Yeah, I don't know what it's not a term we use in the UK. Smokehouse.
What is that? Is that like a hangout for gangsters? Is that
maybe? I would imagine it means like a bar, a bar of some sort.
Okay.
I don't know, because I don't know. I mean, it is in LA, and they have some interesting. I mean, it's not marijuana is not legal in LA, but it might. Well, it is now, I think, but it wasn't at the time of this. But it might as well have been. So maybe it's like asking your local dispensary or your local clinic.
Just asking Hollywood if anybody's
if anyone's there, and they're going to go, "What? Who are you? What are you doing? Where are we?"
What? Who? Who?
Yeah.
What?
Who said this? Yeah. And
man, I like the color of your uniform.
Yeah. Have you got any cake? So I don't know. I assume it means a bar. I don't know. It's not something we would use in this country.
So if anybody knows, feedback at sixgun.org.
Yeah. Right? You know, should I look on Urban Dictionary? Is that a really bad thing to do? I'll probably get some horror.
We'll do that. I'll be very surprised what you find. Maybe it's not the meaning they meant in this show.
I was just going to say, I think we'll get a different...
it's going to be porn.
I wonder if it's one word. I'm going to put probably. No, it won't be. It'll be... Oh, yeah. Oh shit! Yeah, you're right. Actually.
Okay, read it out. What is it?
Okay, so oh my god. Let me just see. Hang on.
Is it that bad?
Oh no, there's a few. A smokehouse, the act of taking a dump. A smokehouse, number 2. There's only 2 definitions. Oh, there's more actually. So I'll read the second one first and then the top one. So the second one is the act of taking a dump in the same bathroom as someone else is taking a shower. So, and the example uses Ashley forgot to lock the bathroom door, so Charlie snuck in and gave her a smokehouse.
Oh my God.
I'm sure people just make this shit up.
Yeah, they are. I don't think they mean that in this case.
Yeah. Okay, so interesting. So they're talking about a smokehouse. This references loosely smokehouses as in smoking, like, meat and stuff. Like people hang them in these houses. But anyway, the top definition, according to this, which has got 270 likes, but remember this is Urban Dictionary, is smokehouse is a nickname for a dark-skinned man with a long penis, named because his schlong looks like a sausage that would be hanging in a smokehouse.
What the fuck?
Not really sure what to make of that one.
Urban Dictionary not really helpful in this case.
No, so sorry, I'm going to close this because the other ones will be just as bad. I'm sure people just put in make up their own shit.
Of course they do. Fucking Urban Dictionary, mate. Oh, God.
Yeah, and then cite it as real because it's on Urban Dictionary. Anyway, so enough of that. Yeah, so we don't know. I suspect he's not telling him to go, and Edgar's telling him to. They make a lot of porn in LA, so maybe he's telling him to go and ask on like porn sets or something, in the valley or whatever.
Have you seen Stokes?
Yeah.
Or in San Bernardino.
Who knows? Yeah. So then titles. It's quite a lot before the titles in this one. So then you get the titles, title sequence as usual, and then we cut back to the inside of the LA Hollywood division, where Bosch and Edgar are. Bosch is sat in his chair in the office, and Edgar comes over, and then you see that Brasher is there walking around the office doing something. To which Bosch, kind of obviously not very enthusiastically, goes, "What's she doing here?" To which Edgar says she got assigned to the detectives detail by billets or whatever.
Well, she's now billets like paperwork.
Yeah, gopher. Or whatever you call it. Yeah. So I put down, obviously this is awkward. Bosch goes in to see Billets to basically ask her what's going on, which is, it has one of the best exchanges I think in the whole episode, where he argues that, what's she doing here? And then he says Pounds must have done it to piss me off and blah, blah, blah. And then Billets says to him, you brought this on yourself, to which Bosch says, how? Because I didn't back her bullshit story. And Billets says, no, because you slept with her.
Yeah.
Which I put zing at the end. And then he's kind of like, obviously he's got no comeback to that.
I did some gun research here. So when Bosch comes in the door, you see Billets with the back to the door, and you see like her holster. Oh, and I think that's a Glock 22. I was wondering because it doesn't, like, the grip doesn't look like the Glock of a grip 17, which I'm familiar with. That's the 9mm version. That's the one you'd use in Germany. And the Glock 22 is the 40 caliber version. So
yeah, when I looked up, because they're standard issue for most kind of police departments or militaries and stuff, a lot of them use the 22.
Well, in the US, yes. In Germany, in Germany the Glock isn't a standard issue. I think the SEK uses them, like our special forces, but usually all police guns in Germany are Heckler & Koch. And it makes sense, which is
supporting the local producer.
It's a German company. Yeah, Glock is an Austrian company. But also you would use the 17 over here because of 9mm, because the standard police, the only police caliber here is 9mm. They all shoot 9mm. So yeah,
makes sense. So obviously Bosch is not getting anywhere with Billets on that. And then we cut to. Stokes kind of walking along the street, and then you see him spotting some cops in a store or something.
Well, they're asking a local smokehouse, apparently.
Yeah, they're probably asking for the smokehouse. I don't know. And he kind of he sees them and then skulks past. And without any spoilers, really, that's the only time you see him in this episode. I think now that I think about it, that's the only sighting of that dude in this whole episode. Is
so I'm thinking
sneaks past.
They need to wind that up in the last episode.
Yeah, that must be what it's for.
It's weird because the whole thing starts with I'm thinking about this, right? Let's talk about this quickly. So I mentioned that they filmed the pilot and then a year later they did the rest of the series. And the pilot really only concerns the Bones case, right? And if you then watch the rest of the series, it starts kind of with the Bone case and goes on more and more towards it goes from the Stokes to Bates, right?
Yeah.
To Waits, sorry, Bates.
It's Norman Bates. That's a different case.
Yeah, no. So it goes on to the Waits case, right? And it feels to me like there is no there was no mention of that in the first episode, right?
I can't remember now.
No, I think Waits comes in the second episode, so he's not in the pilot. So I'm thinking like they changed that they wrote that in. They changed
it's likely
the
that they
script.
won't have written the whole series. Yeah, because I don't know how they do it because a lot of these streaming, like this is one of the obviously an Amazon show, because they're all commissioned at once. They tend to write the whole thing at once. If it's commissioned, so like one of the Marvel series, they'll write the whole kind of 13 episode overall like arcs and stuff in story arcs at the start, like the whole thing, and then they work it out how to do it. But with the network shows, it doesn't work like that, and I suspect this has been a bit similar because it's got a pilot. They just write the pilot, and then they put things in the pilot, and then they're like, we'll write the rest later, and they write
sure.
it. Like,
well, we know it wasn't commissioned because it ran against these other shows in that Amazon pilot thing they do.
Exactly.
So I'm sure they haven't written the rest of the story because they didn't know the series would be going on. I mean, that would be like wasting lots of work and money. So I'm thinking they rewrote that a little bit and thought maybe the book with Waits, so Echo Park, was like the more interesting case, and they wrote that in. And so I find it interesting that it kind of works nicely though. It bookends the season. Because we kind of start with we don't know it's Stokes, but we kind of start with that murder, and it focuses more and more and more on Waits. And spoilers, at the end of this episode, they wind up the whole Waits thing, and then we go back to Stokes. Kind of thing.
Yeah. It implies that. So even when they do like a 1 episode pilot thingy, they usually have to give like a treatment, as they call it, for their overall series story. So they probably added loads. They must have added loads because, as you say, it definitely doesn't appear like it was in the original plan. It makes sense though, because I mean, I don't know, it moves quite quickly, the show and all the rest of it, but if it was just the Bones case, it might be a bit difficult to really make it that interesting for 10 whole hours.
I just thought if they had planned the Waits storyline, they would have dropped that into the pilot. Because usually you drop these hints in a pilot to make people interested.
Definitely, and also he's quite a big part. Well, he's a huge part of the story, and and the actor's really good, and someone does the role really well. So you'd think they'd want to kind of work that in, but they probably hadn't even hired him at that point.
And we do know that. So the other thing we know is that the version of the pilot that we have watched is different to the original one.
It's been changed, yeah.
So I think they reshot some scenes and re-edited it and stuff. So interesting.
Fix it in post. Yep. So we saw Stokes walking past. That's really the last time we see him. But then it cuts to Bosch entering a bar, quite a cool bar,
like a
where he meets
place.
Phyllis.
Yeah.
And she apologizes for. I put down. She apologizes for her earlier zinger, and asks why Pounds has, and this is in quotes, such a hard on for Bosch. And he goes on to explain to her that it goes back to before she was there, when Pounds was in charge of the homicide detectives, and it didn't go very well. Anyway, to which she says, we should have known someone that incompetent would get promoted. And then gives this weird bit of kind of like non-wisdom where she says, my friend says that everything that happens was meant to happen because it happened.
Yeah, that makes no sense at
That's
all.
That's just utter bullshit.
Yeah.
To which Bosch says deep, but he looks like he's being sarcastic.
Oh, yeah, he is being sarcastic. I'm sure.
That's the ultimate bullshit, because you're like, it sounds like it could be clever, but then it's not. It's just bullshit.
And then he asks her if it's so she usually drinks vodka, and now she drinks rye. By the way, Bosch is drinking a Fat Tire, which is some Belgian style hipster ale.
Yeah.
From the US.
I thought that was going to be a cocktail when he ordered it, and it's like, I'll have a flat tire. I was waiting for them to like light some shit and throw it in.
Well, he drinks like these hipster beers in the books.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think they really. I think it's another type of beer, like another brand.
Okay.
So they worked that in, but it fits with the books. And then she's like, but she orders like a rye whiskey, And then she says like her friend turned her onto that, and then he asks her if Bosch asks her if that's the same friend, like the Rye friend with the shitty
with the wisdom, yeah.
And so it turns out that Billets is also having an affair.
Well, she says, you're not the only dumbass
department.
in the division, which is good. Yeah.
So she's also fucking somebody.
Yeah,
and we'll get to
more on that later.
Who that is, yeah.
More on that story later.
Who is Billets fucking? Stay tuned.
They've probably got it on a whiteboard somewhere to work that out. So then next we see like Waits calls Harry again while he's outside and asks his plans for New Year. To which Bosch is like, for the New Year, because it turns out this is like New Year's Eve. And he says, like, obviously his usual shit, which is like, I'm going to catch you and all that. And he's like, I like your can-do attitude, Harry. So I put down Harry shows Waits that he knows where he got the name from, the Reynard Waits thing. He talks to him about, like, are you going to your magic castle, which is all from the story.
That's why the episode's named that, yeah.
Yeah, and then he says, congratulations on you figured out my nom de guerre. I was beginning to wonder if you ever would. But interestingly, something I noticed, I don't know if you noticed this, but he then says, as they're talking, Waits says to him, I'm getting off now, which he obviously means I'm going to hang up the phone. But I put, is there a double meaning here? Because he clearly gets off on ringing Harry. Yeah. And he's basically saying to him, I'm getting off now, as he rings him. So I put down, maybe there's a double meaning to that, because he clearly is. And then Harry pushes him about the children's home, McLaren or whatever it's called, the home. Yep. And then he basically ends up hanging up eventually. But he never tries to like trace the call or anything, does he? Which is weird, because like every time he talks to him, Waits is like, you're just trying to keep me on the phone. But then he's never trying to trace it anyway. So it doesn't.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. I mean, it's not like it's these days you don't have to call somebody. So it might just be that I think it's what they're trying to say is that because Waits keeps calling Bosch has set it up so that anybody he gets, anybody who calls him gets traced. And I think Waits is just changing the SIM card every time. I think
he seems to, doesn't he?
We've seen him several times changing SIM cards or like throwing phones away. So I think it's just assumed that he's using burners.
He must get through a lot of phones, because he seems to constantly be throwing phones out of car windows.
Then like if you're a serial killer, right?
You
gotta be prepared to do that.
Yeah, probably. It's an acceptable cost of the. It's going to say job. It's not exactly
cost
a job,
of doing business.
It's the cost of
as they would say in The Godfather.
That's true. Yeah, that is very true. And then there's quite a lot of kind of quick cuts and things here. So anyway, we have a quick cut back to the station in the task force room, where Harry and Edgar and Barrel and Kiz, all four of them, are reviewing the massive amount of files that they got from.
And they have. So they have. Before that, they've said they had like pictures. Surveillance cameras of the car, of Wade's car, and they were like, maybe we get a plate, and then Crate says, well, we have Crate. Is it Crate? No, it's Barrel, right?
Yeah, it's
Barrel.
It's
Crate's
Barrel,
in
yeah.
hospital. Sorry,
I've got Barrel written down. Crate's kind of out of this whole series.
They say he's in hospital.
They talk about him now and again, but you never get to see him.
At some point in this episode, they say he'll be out soon. I think at the Christmas party, at the New Year's party. Anyway, right. so basically they got a plate, but then they figure out that the plate's from a car that was in long-term storage on LAX. So Waits obviously stole the plates, but they do see the handicap tag on the mirror. That's the thing they see, and we saw earlier. So back a few episodes when you see Wade's car, he's obviously still using his legit plates because you can see on the back plate, you can see it's a handicap plate. But he must have changed them now again.
Yeah, it's his mother's one, isn't it? Yeah. His mother's, handicap badge or whatever. So they've got to review a load of stuff, and then. This is interesting. So we cut back to, I put roadside, basically. You see a roadside by a park where a young mother is taking a baby out of the car.
Echo Park, the name of the novel.
There you go. Yep. Makes sense. And she's taking a baby out of the car and putting it in a pushchair. just as everyone's favorite serial killer approaches, and
in a
again,
Kangol fucking hat. He
and
dressed
sunglasses.
up. Yeah.
Sunglasses. And then he pretends to have found something that might be hers, and that's his excuse to go and talk to her. He's, oh, is this yours? And whatever. And I've put down, he is always extremely creepy and plays the part very well. The guy who does it, because he's kind of like nice but overly nice in a way that makes me think, even if you just met the guy, you'd be like, what's your deal? You're a bit too nice. Or there's something weird about you. Plus the fact that, as you say, he's wearing that funny hat and the glasses makes him look suspicious. But then, so he gives some basic chat about, I've got kids as well and whatever, to try and, try and make her feel more at home. And then this is one of my favorite scenes, actually, this next one, just because it's quite funny. We see Harry's house, where he's talking on the phone to who we realize is Maddie. And then the funny thing is, I mean, the bit that really made me laugh is he goes, I'm going to put you on speaker now, and then puts the phone down. He's like, can you hear me? And because he can't handle, it's the ultimate, apparently he's such a caveman that he can't even handle speakerphone.
They're overdoing that a bit, I felt.
Yeah, I thought that was too much, because then, of course, it goes on to the whole fact that they're trying to make a Skype call. And then,
she's like, go to your contacts. And he's like, I only have you as my contact.
I only have one contact. The magic box is talking to me again. They really do overdo the whole thing.
Also, I thought this whole scene was in the morning.
Yeah.
The light looked really like morning to me, but then Eleanor goes and dinner's on the table on the other end, and you're like, this is sunset.
Yeah, it must be, yeah. But Maddie complained. He said he's obviously concerned. This is because she's told him that they had the car accident, and he says, you're bruised. And she says, can we not talk about the accident?
She's not bruised, by the way.
She doesn't really look bruised.
There's no makeup there. She's not bruised.
Doesn't seem like it. Anyway, so she complains about her mum grounding her and all this stuff, and then asks when she can see him.
She's monitoring my Facebook.
Yeah.
The ultimate.
He doesn't know what that is. If he can't handle a speakerphone, he's not going to understand what that is.
But the way she says it's like the ultimate insult. I'm grounded, and she's monitoring my Facebook.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, it's quite a quick scene, but I did find it really funny the way he shouts into the phone, like, "Can you hear me?" Not in that voice. I don't know why I'm doing that voice. It's not Rocky. Yeah, like, "Can you hear me?" And then, so that's like a little aside, and then we cut back to the same scene as before, but much later, where we see a guy jogging along past the car where the mother was.
Obviously has set.
Yeah, and he hears the baby crying, and the baby. We see that basically the baby's still there in the pushchair, but the mother's gone. So I just put down Waits as being busy. Yeah, and there's a note as well.
From Waits,
and then it seems to cut to. It makes sense actually. The timeline does make sense, because if that's like sundown or whatever, then the next scenes are all kind of like they're all New Year's Eve parties and things. So there's some kind of uniform party that we've sounds weird. You know what I mean? The uniformed, the unis, whatever you want to call them, cops are having some kind of party in a bar for New Year. And then young Irving, Irv Jr., sees Pierce. So it was his partner at the start, and now he's not. And he basically tells him that he's going to move downtown, to which Pierce says, I thought you were all about the streets. And he says, nah, command's where you want to be, brother.
Dead end, man.
He doesn't quite say it like Hulk Hogan, though. The way I mean, command's where you want to be, brother. Whatever, that would be awesome. I'm going to unleash my...
All the Hulkamaniacs are in command these days.
Yeah, I'm going to unleash my 22-inch pythons on the command. Anyway, so yeah, and that's really, again, another
Me and the Macho Man, we're going to command school.
That's it. And it's...
Yeah, so this is, we find out later, this is Billet's party.
No, there's two parties going on. So I don't think that is Billet's party. I think that's the one that's in a bar. So you only find that out later on. You're right. You only find out later on that there's two parties, because I thought at the same time, what's this party? But it's not, because anyway, we'll get to that in a bit.
Well, I noticed that in this party, I thought, what the fuck? Because there was somebody in the background dressed up as a cop.
Yeah, that's the uniform cop party. Whatever.
But obviously, she's dressed up as a cop. She's not wearing an LAPD uniform. She's wearing, like, you can tell she's like
or something.
No, she's like wearing a cheap ass police, and I think this is definitely meant to be a costume because she's wearing one of those, like, these peaked hats. I think it's an NYPD thing. You know, it looks like an NYPD hat, like with a badge. So she's definitely not a cop. Like, do they have strippers? They're dressed as cops. Is that a thing at like cop parties?
Or maybe they're cops who work part time as strippers because they don't get enough money.
I wonder, is it like so? I don't know. So I know that's the thing. You know, getting turned on by uniforms. You know.
Apparently, like, it's a big thing.
I wouldn't say apparently. I do feel that at some point, but like. I like it, but like the thing is it the same thing if you're actually a cop? Like, are you still turned up by uniforms, or is this a turn off because it's basically your work?
Given the amount of that we've already learnt, the amount of internal relationships going on at the what's his name, the LAPD Hollywood division, and maybe it is a turn on for cops because they seem to be quite into.
Well, I can tell you, Brescia looks bloody hot in that uniform.
Yeah, definitely. So anyway, we'll more on that later. But I thought
now you know why I bought this LAPD badge.
Yeah, it does look like the same party at first, but then I realized later on it's in a bar.
Honey, I'm home. Strip search.
Oh dear. All kinds of inspector things going on. So anyway, that's only a really quick scene, and then we're cut back to Waits. Who's got his home in the van or whatever it is, in the truck, and
in the garage, like at his
he's
place.
got the young woman, and she's tied up and she's struggling, and he's moving her into the house, and then again, so there's lots of quick cuts, and then it cuts to Billet's New Year party, where we see Edgar and Crate, they bump into each other.
No, Beryl.
Sorry, Beryl. You're right. I've put the wrong name.
And Beryl's wife. We need Beryl's wife.
Mrs. Beryl. Yeah.
It's like Columbo, Mrs. Columbo.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to change that to Beryl. I put Crate in the other one. There we go. Oh, just in my note. I don't know why I'm doing that in the notes, but I am.
Because you're a nerd. You're OCD. You're like me.
Yeah. Well, I want to.
Notes have to be correct.
Yeah. So this was interesting. So I mentioned this later on, but I may as well mention it now. I'd forgotten that in this part of the story, Edgar and his wife are like separated, because I'm like, why does he keep introducing her to this like girlfriend of his? Well, how is he introducing all his work colleagues? Isn't he married? Like, and he's introducing them to his hot girlfriend. So that they're separated at this point. So ignore that one. That makes sense. I realize.
But as you say, he has a hot girlfriend. Like, she nice legs.
Yeah. Yeah, again, the inspector you were doing your detective work there, taking the job very seriously.
I do the gun research and the leg research.
The leg research, yeah.
I do the leg work.
The leg work, yeah, that's a good one. Then we see Billet walking through and kind of going, whatever, and saying hello to people as she walks her way through to the bathroom in the house, which is obviously presumably her house. She knocks on the door, and then as she enters, we can see that Kiz is in the bathroom. And then she gives her a drink and says Happy New Year or whatever, and then they start kissing and stuff, and you're okay. Mystery solved. I've put down, this is the mystery partner she mentioned to Bosch. Yeah. Must be. You would think.
So Billet's is fucking Kiz. Mystery solved.
Mm-hmm. So if you had that on the sweepstake, well done. You've just won.
She's a lot older than Kiz.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Well, I don't know. I don't know how old she's supposed to be in this, but who knows? Again, though, I think that
Kiz
she says to Bosch. She says to Bosch, doesn't she? You're not the only idiot in the whatever it is in the police force. But if she must be, because she is like the senior officer. So she's in the same position he was in that, like, if you're a senior officer and you have a relationship with
she is worse.
Junior,
she is worse because
she's worse because she's not the captain.
She's worse because Brescia, when they're in the car, when Bosch is in the car with her, and Bosch is like we need to keep this quiet because regulations. She quotes the regulations at him and says, "It's not a problem because you're not in my chain of command." Kiz is directly in Billet's chain of command.
You're right. Yeah, she is, because she's the lieutenant. Yeah,
but also, Billet is a lot better in keeping it quiet.
She is. She could maybe Maybe Bosch should learn some lessons from that.
Yeah.
Probably. So that's a big reveal, obviously. And then we cut down to basically another quick cut to Waits' I've called it Waits' underground lair. It's basically the cave that he's been digging out.
He's kind of dug it out from the garage. So, like, his mother's house, as far as I can tell, is on this little hill. Yeah. And his garage is at street level. So he's been digging straight from the garage, apparently.
Into the rock. Which would take forever because it's solid rock.
It is not rock. That's the thing. When you it's earth. It's I think it's like if you look at like I don't know. It's weird. I don't think it'll work.
The other thing is, where's he going to put all the stuff that he's taken out of the ground? You've got to dump that somewhere, and that's gonna you'd have to. Someone would see you taking loads of.
Well, we know that from The Great Escape, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't fit all that down your trousers. I would imagine. I would imagine anyway. Yeah, so it's only a quick scene that anyway. It just cuts to more establishing.
I find these scenes extremely creepy. Like that a woman that he's kidnapping. She's doing the actress is doing a great job there.
Yeah,
like she's like the way she's just screaming her head off. Like while. But
the other thing is, he left a baby by the side of the road with nobody there as well. So clearly she'd be like,
No, of course she'd be. I'm just saying the actress is playing it. Very well. It's very, very disturbing scenes.
It is, it is. And then Harry arrives at the party, at Billet's party, to which he immediately asks Barrel how he's getting on reviewing the images and the files. To which Barrel says, like, "Happy New Year to you too," which is a standard joke, I would imagine, for him. Edgar again. So this is, I don't know what we've already talked about this, but I've put down Edgar is introducing everyone to Marissa, his hot girlfriend, but isn't he married? So anyway, we've cleared that up, so don't worry about it. All their phones start going off.
That's a nice scene. That's well done.
It is, yeah. So all their phones start going off because clearly something's happened, and then obviously we know what's happened, but they won't know. But which is that Waits has kidnapped someone and left a note. And then, so this is the reason I knew it was the uni, because it cuts from this back to what I've called the uni's New Year party, which is in some kind of bar, because they're all watching the TV in the bar, and it's all the people who were in that party.
I know that's a different party. I just assumed that the first party was the one with billets, because that didn't look like a bar to me.
Yeah, it doesn't
look like
I don't
a
know.
house. Maybe it's a third party. I mean, everybody's having parties. Maybe. It's New Year's. Who knows?
That's true. It's New Year's. So anyway, so they're all watching the news on the TV, and so at Billet's party, they're doing the same thing. And then somebody, I think Billet says, "Where's Bosch?" Which Edgar says he took off as soon as this came on, which is not surprising. And then we see that Harry's on the phone to Eleanor, who's a profiler, as we know. So he's asking her opinion about like what all this means. And then she says, interestingly, at the end of this scene, she says to him, "I think he's using her as bait."
Yeah,
then she says, "For you, Harry," as if it's going to be like bait for somebody else. But there you go. Well, so she kind of clarifies.
Basically, the end game. So basically, he wants to end it.
Yeah, and he's trying to draw Bosch to him with the kidnapped victim, and then we get more flashbacks of Harry seeing his mother, which is quite obviously it's very sad, but it's quite touching the way it's done. The whole like, "Oh, you'll be asleep when I get home, and I'll see you in the morning," and all this stuff, which he never did. Which is really sad. And then as he's looking at a photo in the task force room of the recreation, basically that Waits did of his mother, of how they found his mother in the dumpster thing, which is quite sad. And then finally, however far this is into the episode, it's like over halfway, I think, almost. We finally get a bit of Irv as we get to Irv's office.
But he's not saying anything.
But he doesn't say anything. No, it just cuts to Irv's office where we see him and Washington, the driver dude, as they're watching TV, and they see the chief, the police chief, saying that they're putting everyone onto 12-hour rotations, and the off-duty officers will be called back, and people are on holiday and shit like that. And Irv just kind of looks at the TV. I put down, Irv says nothing but gives an intense look at the TV,
which is
Which is kind of what he does, but he doesn't give away anything. There's not like I'm a pissed off look, or it's because it's Irv. You don't know what he's.
I don't know what.
He only has one look, which is like, I'm pissed off, I'm happy, I'm whatever. It's always the same look.
I don't know what that scene is about.
No, I didn't get what the point of that was, unless it links to later on when Irv turns up at the.
Yeah,
but he would know that. He would know that anyway, though, wouldn't he? Everyone would know about the whole showdown thing. So anyway, I don't know. Unless that, I thought maybe they're trying to establish that he's noticed that something's going on, but you'd hope that he fucking would, as soon as everyone else's phone's gone off. He'd have to be pretty stupid not to realize there was something going on. This is interesting. Back in Waite's lair, the victim's still struggling. He takes the tape off her mouth and then he says he has a bucket and a toilet roll
paper,
to
like
which he kind of
bucket.
offers to help her. He goes, if you want to use this, I will help you. And then he says to her, it's weird. It's like he's trying to endear himself to her, which is what I put, because he goes, I'm sorry about like the rats or whatever. And he's like, every time I put down mothballs, they keep coming back. And then he says he's sorry that it's so damp in there. And then something else, and he's basically like he's trying to be like hospitable in some way.
Also, it's beyond damp. There is water
on
the floor. That's not damp. No. And then, I mean, what kind of a creep move is that? Like, I'll help you shit in the bucket. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Man,
it is odd. And then she basically says, "Let me go." Why can't you let me go? And he just says, "I can't let you go. I need you." Which is like the most matter-of-fact kind of response. And then he says, I've got to go outside because there's no reception in here on his phone because they're, underground. To which he then calls the reporter, who I thought was called Dave Taylor, but he's called Nate Taylor apparently, and says that, he says, you did a good job of writing about Bosch, writing about Detective Bosch. I want you to write my story. And then the guy's like, okay. And then he gets really pissed off because the guy's not happy enough about it or not excited.
To his credit, he doesn't just go, okay. I thought this was played really well. This is like, I was thinking, how do you feel as a journalist if like the serial killer calls you up?
Calls you, yeah.
Like on one hand, you'd probably be happy because it's like a huge story. But on the other hand, so Taylor's already having problems because like this guy killed somebody because he wrote like some details in a story. And he's already feeling bad about that. And then you're talking to a serial killer. Like the guy's obviously mad. Like I thought he played that like indecision between having like a story and it all being really creepy really well. Also, the LA Times lobby they filmed that in. That's fucking amazing. It's like a Superman set, like the Daily Planet. They have like this. They have like this big globe in the middle, and then like these murals on the walls. Looks really great.
Yeah, it's really nice, and as you said, we'll get more of this in a minute. But he does play it very well. That guy, he's not in this show very much actually, but really, I mean, but the little bits that he is in, he's very good. That's one thing I noticed about the whole series. Really, is that like all the little bit parts that you think, they could have just got anyone to do that. Because it's like one episode where you need a person for like a minute, but they're all really well done. Like they all seem to have been tried really hard and got best people to do it. Anyway, so so Waits is pissed. He's like annoyed that the guy's not more excited about the opportunity to write his story, and then he tells him, he starts to tell him the story, presumably over the phone. I was waiting. I think the first time I watched this, I was waiting for Waits to come and meet me to the reporter, which would obviously be really fucking dodgy, and then him to kill the reporter in some way, but that was just my alternative version of this. But anyway, so and then we cut to a diner where Bosch is sat, waiting in the diner, and then the reporter comes in and tells him about the phone call and all that. But clearly they've already talked about it because Bosch says to him, I was surprised that you called me, whatever else.
Well, yeah, he obviously called Bosch and said, let's meet.
Come and meet me, yeah. And he says he clearly feels guilty, the reporter, as you said, about like someone being killed because of what he'd written. As fucking hell, you would feel guilty about that. And Bosch asks him to give him his phone, and he's like, I can't do that. So he doesn't want to give him the phone.
To his credit here, he's trying to do the right thing, right? So if he was just like trying to do his job and like the best thing is for his career, and the thing you would do as a journalist would not to go to the police at this point. I mean, that's if your career is most important to you. You're not doing that.
But then in his case, I was going to say he's already had a bad experience with that.
Right, and so he's trying to do the right thing. He's going to Bosch. Bosch treats him like shit, and then demands his phone. And the guy, like, I mean, he's completely right. Like, I can't give you his phone. Like, I think he says the Times will crucify me. And he's completely right. Like, he can't give the police his phone, but he does. So he gives it to Bosch, and Bosch says, we'll just transcribe this. He recorded
in
the
an
phone
hour,
call.
He says you'll have it back in an hour.
And you'll get your phone back, right? But so the guy knows he needs a new phone, right?
Yeah.
Right. You can't, as a reporter, you can't give the police your phone and then he has to throw it away afterwards because he has to assume they bugged his phone.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would think so.
But I thought this is he's becoming he was portrayed as an asshole most of the show.
Yeah, it makes him a much more sympathetic character.
Yeah,
right?
and you can definitely see he's doing the right thing. He kind of knows, he kind of thinks that the woman's still alive, and he's like, I gotta talk to Bosch now. I gotta give this to Bosch. They need to catch this guy.
Yeah,
like fuck the story. They need to catch this guy.
Yeah, which is true. And then we cut to the task force room where Bosch is reading the transcript that that he's got from the phone to the others. And they're all standing around or sitting around listening. And he says at one point, this is Waits' transcript, it says, "My mother would take me to see The Lady of the Lake." And then they all go, "What's that about? Like a film or something?" And then Bosch says it's a statue in Echo Park. And then they realize the whole Echo Park thing's very important. And then Bosch says he thinks...
Yeah.
Go on. No,
yeah,
go on.
So the thing is, they were wondering why when they picked up Waits originally with the body in the van, why he was in Echo Park when his apartment was in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And so Bosch realizes that he was bringing the body home, and home as in not to his apartment where Waits hasn't been since he's in the wind. We know this because they're watching his apartment. So he's like, okay, it must be his mom's house. Or his magic castle thing. So that must be somewhere near Echo Park. That's why that happened in Echo Park.
Yeah, and that's what he says. He says, "Oh, he must have been taking it to his home." And then they look on the missing kids to find ones that are near, or the kids that were on the list of files that they had from the home, for ones that might have lived near or were fostered to parents or whatever that were near Echo Park. And then this happens a lot, although I suppose it's quite common in these kind of shows. Bosch almost instantly picks up the file that happens to be the right file and goes, "Oh, this is it."
Well, I looked at this. He picks up one other file first, looks through it, and then picks up the right one, and then just says to Edgar, "Let's go." And Edgar's like what the fuck? Why does he know? And then on the way out, he says, "Well, basically, it's the French connection. Like it says." That's when
Gene Hackman shows up. Yeah,
it says in that file that his foster mother, like this kid's called David Harris, and his foster mother was a French teacher.
Yeah, and then obviously that's as they're walking out. Yeah,
and then go on. As they're in the car, like Edgar pulls up like the history of the foster parents, and then says the dad died of like some lung disease, and then Bosch goes like, that was the asbestos thing. And then also Edgar figures out that so David this David Harris guy fell off the grid in 93.
Was it 94? I thought. Anyway, I thought you said 94.
He fell off the grid in 93, and a few months later in 94, Waits appears.
Waits shows up. Yeah.
So Waits Waits later says his work, he's been doing this for 20 years. So that's when he started killing. And I think that's also when he started digging his catacombs there.
Yeah, which must have taken a while, I would think.
So he must have worked, he says he worked on that for 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's maybe how he got the stuff.
Onto something big, basically.
Yeah, that's maybe also how he got like the Earth moved, because he was doing it over a very long.
Yeah, and this is where it gets like, it's all ramping up to more kind of drama here, and this is where it really starts to kick off. As they arrive at the house, at Waits' house, to have a look around, there's no answer at the door, and then the smell, they smell from by the window at the dead body, which must have been there for a while, and they like Bosch just goes, dead body.
I think he killed his mom at Christmas, right? So it's
so it's like a week later.
It's like a week,
about a week later. And I'm imagining, I mean, I don't know much about how bodies decompose, but in LA where it's reasonably hot most of the time.
it's obviously throughout the whole show, it's kind of warm. Like Bosch keeps wearing
that's
shirts.
So
outside.
The body would really decompose quite quickly, you would think, in a week, or start to anyway. Well, actually, we see that later on, but and then Bosch immediately says, Waits said his mother died. And then they break a window to get into the house and have a look around.
I thought they played the smell really well. They keep breathing like
and coughing and stuff. Yeah.
The family photos. Did you by any chance freeze frame that?
I didn't know, but I did see.
Because I did. Because okay, so they have several pictures, and on the right one is definitely a picture of the actor who plays Waits.
Oh yeah, it is. I noticed that. Yeah,
being young and looks really realistic. And in the middle is a fucking atrocious Photoshop that is really bad.
Okay.
It's really, really bad. Like, if you want to, maybe I should like screen cap this and put it in the show notes. It's like the parents, and then like a kid in the middle, and it's like the head of a kid. I don't know if it's the actor that Waits played, like being young, like maybe 12, but it's like his head is like too small for the body, and the neck is too long. It's a fucking atrocious Photoshop. Okay, I'll put a note in the show notes.
We should put because I didn't freeze frame it. I looked, but it's only a quick like second flash of the thing, isn't it? Because I did notice the picture of the same actor. I spotted it was the same guy, but I wasn't looking at the other photos, so they clearly could have put a bit more. Put a bit more effort into that.
In the screen for a second, but I freeze framed it.
Yeah, makes sense. So then they break into the bedroom where they find the body, which is partly decomposed, quite heavily decomposing. And obviously again the smell's even worse.
Like fruit, like Wade said earlier. It looks. It does look like a rotten. It looks really bad.
Yeah, it does a bit. To be honest, I mean, although she's portrayed as being really annoying, the mother that is, I felt really sorry for her because she seemed to be, I don't know, it's not a nice way to go, and
no.
And he, obviously, she doesn't come to a good end, and then getting found like that as well. Anyway, so obviously they found the body. There's no one in the house that they can see, so they head back down to the garage, which, as you said, is kind of below because it's on a hill. And they find Waite's car. I put down, it looks like a Ford Bronco made famous by OJ's televised police chase. It does. I should probably make a note to look at that further. But anyway, so then they look through. They find his workshop where we saw him messing with phones and shit earlier on. And then Edgar says he's going to go back to the car because the radio doesn't work in the garage, in the underground cave thing.
This, by the way, this is really dumb. So he turns on his radio, right, and it does this screech. She's like, "Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't have reception. I need to go outside.
I'll go back to the car."
That's not how radios work. Like if it wouldn't have connection, you just wouldn't hear anything.
Yeah, it's a weird one, and it's clearly because they need Bosch to go in on his own.
Yeah,
and I know, just lazily. No, I'm saying it's very lazily done. You're right, because immediately Bosch just goes, "Yeah, you do that." It's like he immediately goes, "Good idea, you do that." Oh, he doesn't actually say good idea.
That is not how radios work.
Yeah. Good idea. You shouldn't be in this scene. To which,
exactly. I need to go in there and shoot the guy. You just go. Yeah.
Can you fuck off while I go and do this?
What follows is like his confrontation with Waits, and then basically Edgar comes in. You see him, one shot of him being through the tunnels, and these tunnels are not that long, right? He kind of dug out like kilometers under the rock at that point, right? So, I mean, you see that one shot, and then he
takes a long time to walk.
Yeah, and then he just comes in at the end, and you're like, what?
That's obviously got to be done for the timing, though, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah.
But you see that, and then so Harry, interestingly, because he mentioned this a few times, but one of the things that Waits took from the hardware store where he killed the clerk was a sump pump, as they call it, which is for getting all. And as you pointed out, that like cave thing that he's got is basically half underwater, so he needs that pump, and that's how Bosch notices that there's a hose coming with water coming out of it from under one of the workbenches, and then he does a real kind of what's the word, Shawshank Redemption kind of thing, where he pulls back as he pulls back like a curtain, you can see there's a massive hole in the wall, which is how he finds it, which is quite a nice, I don't know if it's conscious reference to kind of that kind of poster moment in Shawshank Redemption, but it's a really famous moment. Anyway, so then he shouts David, and we see, as you say, they have the confrontation. Waits has got the girl, the victim, the kidnapping victim. He's got the gun to her head and all that business. And then they start having this weird discussion. He says, "How do you like it? The monument. It took me 20 years people should appreciate it. And then he says, this is Waits, obviously. And he's saying, people need to know my story. I mean something, which is clearly very big to him. And he talks about his foster parents and asks Harry about his foster parents. And then he says, I envied you at McLaren. You were strong. You could defend yourself, which is interesting because up until this point, we didn't know that they were contemporaries really, or that he knew Bosch from there as quite as clearly as this anyway. And then he says, I've tried so hard to get through to you. Why can't you see me? I'm the monument. And then they made me just as they made you, or something, he says to him. And then obviously he pushes the girl out the way, and then Harry puts like 3 in his chest. Classic,
Yeah, so Waits, you can see that Waits obviously wants to get killed because he pushes her, like he has her like in a very uncomfortable scene. So I did some gun research again, and I looked up. So he's using Craig's gun, which is let me not lie, 1 second, which is it's a Beretta, 92 FS, which is also a LAPD issue gun. And it's got this stick out barrel, and he's pointing the gun into her cheek so that you can't see that the barrel's sticking out. And if you know that gun, there's like maybe 3 centimeters of barrel sticking out. So it must have been really uncomfortable to the actress.
You would think so, wouldn't you? Yeah. Unless he's like giving her a quick ear exam at the same time.
By the way, before we go on, I'm quickly gonna send you. I did a screen cap of this atrocious Photoshop, and I'm gonna send you this in the chat. Just have a look at the picture.
I see what you mean. The kid's head in the middle.
That looks like a much older person. Like that looks like a 16-year-old. They were like, this is wrong. He was like he wasn't 18. He was like 12. And then just give me a head of some kid that looks similar, or maybe they cut that. Maybe that is a childhood picture. They often do that of like the actor.
Of the actor, yeah.
Like the woman does look like it's the same actress that plays.
Could be.
Could be. And it just looks like it's her family picture, maybe from her, and they just stuck the other actor's face on it. It's way too small, and it just looks atrocious. It just looked like that's like the worst Photoshop I've ever seen.
It's not great, yeah. I've obviously, as you're listening to this, have a look at the notes to see the photo we're talking about.
Yes,
but I know what you mean. It does look a bit kind of iffy. So anyway, where are we up to? So
sorry, yes.
No, it's fine. That's the big dramatic bit over anyway. So he shoots him in the chest, and then, as you pointed out, Edgar arrives just after the shooting, is what I put down. Like, so he's like been waiting around the corner, checking his shoes because they've got wet or something, and because he's we know he loves his shoes. And then that's the big, as you said, you would think in a lot of the way a lot of these shows are done, this would be maybe not the last scene, but this would be the end of the series, this season would be like, oh, he's got the big killer and he's killed him and all that. But obviously it's not. And then we cut to, so that's a really long kind of, I put all that down. It is one scene. It's a really long scene. It's about like 8 minutes long, or maybe even nearly 10 minutes, but it's really dramatic. And then we cut to another scene finally where Harry's outside. All the police cars are there. Obviously it's sometime later. And he sees Billets, who says that, surprise, surprise, FID wants to talk to him, internal affairs and all that, to find out about the shooting. And he seems really kind of upset about the shooting. He seems conflicted, I put down, about the shooting. To which she says, Harry, you did good. And she's trying to reassure him.
Yeah, or maybe he's just, I don't know. I took it like maybe he's confused. Or maybe he's just feeling bad because he again.
Well, he basically gave Waits what he wanted, didn't he?
Well, and again, he's just shot like somebody.
But he didn't seem that bothered when he shot other people. That's what I put down on somebody else. He wasn't as bothered when he shot other people as he is by this. But I suppose he has the weird kind of relationship with the guy. Kind of keeps ringing him and trying to.
I think it's more the the factor the effect on his career, because he's just come from a court case. He's doing it again. Like
yes. Well, that plays into the whole thing about, and he even says it to Waits, like just before he shoots him, almost. The whole thing about dogs from the same kennel and all that, and how Waits sees himself as the same as Harry. Almost, he says, they made me just as they made you, and all that stuff. About talking about the children's home, but everyone seems to be trying to reassure him. So, like, interestingly, this is what I put down. We see Irving and Wash, who's his driver, and on the scene, and they see the police chief arrive, and Irv says from a distance, I'm sure he thinks this buys him a second term. We'll see about that, in his voice. And his Irv voice.
Irv out.
Irv out. Yeah. So anyway, and then meanwhile, then you see Pounds, who's telling another officer to work the media, as he calls it. He says, make sure they know the lead that broke this came from the task force. Bosch may be the hero, but we solved this.
Yeah.
And
so
I put down
he's saying, like, Bosch doesn't have anything to worry about this.
Basically, yeah. But it's the way they're all kind of positioning to take credit for it. I thought was really kind of interesting. I put down they're all trying to take credit like vultures. Like vultures around a corpse, literally in this case.
I mean, that's probably realistic. That's probably what happens in that case, right? That's a big profile case.
Yeah. And Harry's upset, clearly. He rings Eleanor again and says, we found Waits. And then she says, he's dead, isn't he? And which Harry says, yeah, I put him down. And then he says, tell Maddie that I love her, and he's all upset. And I put down, Harry is upset by this shooting in more so than others, it seems. Anyway, but then even Irv comes over to Bosch and says, tells him he's done well. He's like, well done, Bosch. And Bosch is like, he's clearly upset a bit, and he's like, he says to Bosch, Waits' gun. There were no rounds in the weapon. To which I'm getting quite good at that. I'm going to keep doing that. She says, suicide by cop. Harry says suicide by cop, and then there's a pause, and he says me, and he looks quite upset because he realizes that he's basically done what he wants. To which Irv goes, what does it matter? He's gone. And then walks off. Irv out. Walks off.
I don't understand why Bosch is upset, because I mean this whole thing was going towards that, and Bosch was saying that. I mean, they were talking about that on the phone.
He did say suicide by cop, though, didn't he? He said there's another way that when they have all those discussions, it's like there's another way this could go. You could point the gun at me.
Yeah, and he was basically saying, "I'm going to shoot you." Like that's Waits was like, "You're going to shoot me," and he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to shoot you." And then he was
and he shoots him, and he's like, "Oh, I shot him."
Yeah, and then in another episode, he's like talking to Eleanor, and it's the same thing. And even in this episode, when Eleanor says that's what's happening, that's why he kidnapped her. Like to get you, and it's the end game, and that's that's the thing with serial killers, that's how it works, the end game. And and he really wants everyone to. So the point is, he wants all the attention because I mean, this is so obvious in the previous scene when he does shoot him. He keeps going on about people should see my work, people should. And he quotes like a Jesus quote, right? He does this prophet. What's it?
But I wondered if Bosch was upset because he's almost given him not just giving him what he wanted in shooting him, but he's kind of giving him what he wanted in drawing all this massive media attention to him. I don't know.
Yeah, but he says a prophet is without honor in its own country, which is a Jesus quote. So I think he's being sad. Like he's being completely off his nut, thinking he's Jesus. And I mean, what does Bosch? I mean, I don't understand this because basically, I mean, this is the Bosch pattern, right? He goes in there alone again. I mean, this is why it's catacombs, so it's the tunnels again, right? It's Bosch's thing with the tunnels. He goes in the tunnels. He's in the war again, and then he shoots the guy. Edgar is just outside having a fucking radio call. He could just wait for Edgar. They could go in together if he doesn't want this pattern. So the only thing I can understand what's going on here is that Bosch has basically analyzed that this is his pattern. And he's sad that he keeps following his pattern. He's upset about that. That basically he can't do anything about that.
Maybe, yeah. And I wondered if the fact that Waits basically says to him that, you're the same as me and you'll always do this kind of, basically, he's like, you're always going to end up doing this. You're the same as me. It upsets him because he thinks maybe it's when he first kind of realizes almost, or it comes home to him that maybe he is the same and maybe he is always going to do this and he can't seem to stop it or whatever. I don't know. Who knows? But he looks he looks very upset. He looks kind of forlorn and that, as you said, as it pans out away from him. And we see we see all the police lights and just how many fucking dozens of cars there are there.
Yeah, it just goes up, right? It's just like the pan.
And that's Yeah, and that's the kind of ending of the episode, the closing of the episode.
And that just felt like me an end of a season. That I don't know.
Yeah.
I understand that they now need to wrap up the thing with Stokes, but like
and the Arthur Delacroix business.
Why have that? Yeah, why have that shot like that? The way that is set up, that scene, it's just like an end of a season thing to me.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it is very much. I don't know. It is a strange one. So something I put down after this. I put down what have we learned from this episode, or what have we learned. So I put down some bullet points. Number one was Billets is in a secret relationship with Kiz, which we didn't know before. But there's never even any hint of that. Actually, it didn't take long to kind of set that up and then reveal it. There was not much suspense.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be a surprise, right? Like
I think so.
To the viewer.
Yeah, and then I put Waits seemed to get what he wanted from Harry, which was death by cop. Waits saw himself as the monument, and Harry as well, because he says to him, "They made me as they made you," and the whole dogs in the same kennel thing. Yeah, and then I put, well, we've talked about this already, but Waits wanted the media attention, but he kept saying he wanted to mean something. He wanted to show that he meant something, or I mean something. So clearly that was a big thing for him. And then something that I put delusional. Down. Yeah, and you said the Jesus thing, so that would very much fit in with that. And then the last point I put on the notes was probably something that we already knew, which is everyone in the department is trying to use this to now improve their situation and their career and position, politics and stuff, which I just put down. We probably knew already, but it did kind of, what's the word? Hammer the point home, I suppose. But I thought it was a really good episode. It's a very
that was a good episode.
Dramatic episode.
I thought so too. I'm looking forward to what happens in the next episode, which I can't remember at all, but it must be the Stokes thing.
What I want from the next episode is Crate in hospital and a load of flashbacks to what he's been up to.
Like what?
So
like
just Crate sat there, remembering that day they had like orange Jello or something.
Like there is a hilariously bad Riker episode, I think at the end of season 2 of TNG, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Where they obviously completely ran out of scripts. Like it's preceded by 2 or 3 really, like there's the good Borg episode, right? And then there's a lot of really shitty episodes. And then the last one is just, they blatantly ran out of scripts. And it's just like flashbacks, like Riker's in a coma. Right. And it's just like cut together from all the other episodes in season 2. It's like half of the episode is just like repurposed footage from the other episodes, because they're obviously I mean TNG, right? That's like 24. This is when TV shows still had like 24 episode seasons or 27 or whatever.
It's a lot of episodes to film.
It's like the last episode is just like Crate watching TV in hospital.
Maybe, could be. And I want to know what Crate's been up to in hospital. That's what I want to know.
So I just want some soft corn with billets and Kiz. Yeah,
that as well. That could happen. So it's and whatever the uniform the uniform stripper was as well in the
exactly
in the other place. So we've got, as you say, one episode to go, and one episode of Bosch to go, and then we'll have a wrap up episode.
Right, we'll do the finale, the double finale, the finale.
The finale of the finale, which should be good. So not long to go now. That's kind of the main business, as you said, is kind of done now. So it's all wrapping up.
No, just to recap. So we know. So Stokes was Arthur Delacroix's killer, right?
Yeah.
So we need to wrap that.
Yeah. That's still got to be wrapped up. Yeah. True. So what I'm trying to find the notes.
And I'm remembering something about this episode that's coming up.
Uh-huh.
Somebody's gonna go through a plate glass window. It's gonna be great.
Oh, right, okay, yeah. I haven't seen this in a long time, so it's going to be interesting to watch that. So we'll be back with that, soon. And I should have mentioned this right at the start, actually, but we ended up, because we said we'd had a gap between episodes and that. So we kept the release schedule pretty good, though. So we should be back soon with the final ones.
I'll
finish in April.
I'll keep it so that we, like, even if we don't release 2 in a month, we'll make it up. It'll even out in the end.
Of course. And as you said at the top, do send us your feedback, because we want to talk about stuff like you talk about your opinions on the last episode. So you can email feedback@sixgun.org and ignore any weird auto responses that you get from that, because your email is important to us, and all that business. Or you can go to GitLab as well if you want, and you can put comments and things on there, I think. If you're that nerdy, there's a link in the show notes as well.
We are now, by the way, the thing that I haven't mentioned, but I have restructured sixgun.org, and finally I've moved all the GNR episodes over.
Is that why we started getting all the people asking where all the other stuff's gone, all the archives? I keep getting messages from people going, "Where's the archive gone?"
Well, the archive's gone, yeah.
Okay.
I also need to make space on the server. So yes, the archive is gone. But if you now go to sixgun.org, you will see that that Hollywood Outlaws is right on there.
I'll do it now.
So people can find the show now.
Yeah, it was kind of hidden before, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was because like the main WordPress instance was the GNR instance, and I had to move all of that over to its own subsite. And now that I could make this, I could rejigger all of this. So there's now all the shows. We have currently on Sixgun 5 shows.
I was just looking at that. Yeah.
I'm aiming for 6 because Sixgun.
Sixgun, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I got that.
But I'm currently at the absolute maximum of shows I can produce.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're kind of like,
I need somebody else to do a show for me that we can just put on the network.
Like a live straight to without editing almost.
Well, I'm not editing anything these days. This is all. I mean, we're so good, Dan. We're so good.
Yeah, true. Yeah, well, good point. So you can find it on there. It's nice to see the artwork on the homepage there. Looks good.
And by the way, you might have noticed, I also since you're full on the network again, I switched the station ID back to the old one.
I know that's another thing people kept tweeting me about, which was like, oh, there's a new. They've started using the old thing. A lot of people put down. What did they put? It was like nostalgic or something. There was loads of people who were like, "Oh, it's really good."
We're back to the old jingle. Maybe you can.
I want to do one as Irv.
I was just gonna say that you need to do one as Irv, like new media, new rules.
Six Gun Productions. You just gotta like extend every word, like Six Gun Productions. No, that's too much. Anyway, I'll figure it out.
Irv out.
Irv out. Yeah. New media, Irv out. Great. I can do it better than that. I'll work on that one. So, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at HW Outlaws is the address. On Discord, you can chat to us on there as well.
So you can also send us feedback through those channels, and I'll collect it all.
Yeah, and a big thanks to Bytemark for hosting everything really. So a big thanks to them for providing the hosting, and a big thanks to the Bourbon Boys for the intro song, which is awesome. Remington Magnum Express, which I still love very much. Yeah, it's awesome. All right, and I think that's it. So we'll catch you next time for the final episode of Bosch and the penultimate episode of this podcast, this season of the podcast, I suppose you call it.
Right. Code 7. Yeah, great.
No, I do that every time. You can't put that on every time.
No, that's good. I want to put that in. I'll just edit that. So we have 2 different tracks. So the thing I said, I can edit that out. I'll put that in. It's great. I'll send you my recording as usual, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. Hang on, I'll stop my recorder.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, I'm just gonna say goodbye to Twitch. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you like it. I'm gonna try to stream more recording sessions like this because I found it like, whoa, what was that? What the heck is that? Is that the Skype chat going? What the hell was that? Did you hear that, Dan? Did he hang up? I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm gonna do more of these. I think it's better than just putting the show with some artwork on YouTube, and so people can also watch it live on Twitch. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon for some more content. Don't know what it is yet, but thanks for watching. Goodbye.